Coming up on Mountain News this morning, we'll share with you the latest details about the fire that heavily damaged an iconic cathedral and what people are doing to help. And authorities are searching for an armed woman who they say was infatuated with Columbine. Plus, people in a southern Kentucky town say allegations against a former teacher and soccer coach are almost too bizarre to believe.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News This Morning.
Good morning, I'm Taylor Upchurch. Today is Wednesday, April 17th. Let's check in with Brandon Robinson for a look at your forecast this morning. Brandon, it sounds like we have another day of amazing weather.
Absolutely. It's going to be a very gorgeous day, even warmer than yesterday by a couple of degrees. And it should be a fairly nice Thursday as well. But by the time we get to the end of the week, some big changes on the way. Let's take a look at the hazard camera outside the WYMT studios this morning. All quiet across the region. But as we see, just a few clouds drifting through on the satellite radar loop the last 6 hours, and again really kind of quiet, but again the temperatures are the big story. Once, as we talked about this morning earlier, we're looking at 46 in Monticello, starting to go up just a little bit there, but 60s across parts of the area on those ridge tops. So it's going to be a different type of day depending on where you are this morning. 61 Paducah, 48 Charleston, 45 Tri-Cities, 65 in Louisville. A little bit more on the iced coffee on some of those warmer ridge tops there this morning. Normal day for most of us on the coffee meter. The full forecast on the way in just a few minutes. Taylor?
All right, thank you, Brandon. This morning, the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris is a battered shell of its former self, but it's still standing. CBS's Roxana Sabiri reports from Paris.
A day after the Cathedral of Notre Dame nearly burned to the ground, officials in Paris are still assessing the extent of the damage. Flames destroyed most of the 800-year-old landmark's roof, including its 300-foot spire. The world got its first look inside the building on Tuesday. Piles of charred timber can be seen strewn before the altar as light pours in through the gaping hole above it. French President Emmanuel Macron made a nationally televised address to discuss the disaster. He praised the first responders as heroes and expressed hope that the cathedral would soon be restored. Though President Macron has vowed to rebuild Notre Dame in 5 years, some experts here say, depending on the damage, that process could take decades. Investigators are also concerned with places the fire never touched. Damage from smoke, heat, and water may have compromised the structure's integrity.
As long as the vaults hold, the structure should be okay. But you have all the water and you have all the wood debris that's fallen on top, and they weren't made to carry that weight.
Around 50 inspectors have been assigned to determine the fire's cause. They spent much of Tuesday interviewing workers who had been renovating the cathedral's rooftop. Roxana Sabiri, CBS News, Paris.
A French billionaire and his family are doing their part to help rebuild the cathedral. On Tuesday, Francois Pinault announced that he and his father will donate more than $100 million to the repair effort. His wife, actress Salma Hayek, posted a photo of the fire on her Instagram account, saying she was in deep shock and sadness over the tragedy. Pinault and Hayek tied the knot less than 1 mile from the cathedral back in 2009. And the University of Notre Dame in Indiana is paying tribute to the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The bells at the Basilica of the Sacred Heart on the university's campus in South Bend tolled 50 times Tuesday night. The university says it's also donating $100,000 to help with renovations at the European landmark. There's no direct connection between the cathedral and the university. And the donations pouring in for the repairs on the cathedral in Paris is also drawing attention to more churches in need. Since the blaze, fundraising has soared for 3 recently burned black churches in Louisiana. Donors contributed close to $500,000 for rebuilding the churches on Tuesday alone. A GoFundMe campaign has so far collected more than $600,000. And the New York City skyline was blue, white, and red as the landmark skyscrapers, including the One World War Trade Center, sported lights reflecting the French tricolor flag. The lights served as a show of solidarity with France after Monday's massive fire that severely damaged Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The lights mirror a display from 2015 done after the Paris attacks that killed 137 people. And teachers at Lynn Camp say they're thankful their seniors visited the Notre Dame Cathedral before it caught fire. Students spent their senior trip in London and Paris touring several monuments earlier this month. The Notre Dame Cathedral was a favorite for students and staff alike, which made the news of the fire hit home for them.
It's heartbreaking knowing that we had been there and we had seen all of that and that other people may not be able to see the same things.
This is the first year the senior trip has been international. Every year before this, senior went to the Washington, D.C. and New York. Yesterday marked 12 years since the deadly mass shooting at Virginia Tech. The Day of Remembrance started with a candle lighting ceremony at midnight and continued with another ceremony in the morning, all to commemorate the lives lost here. Anthony Romano has more.
What began at midnight continued later Tuesday morning when cadets laid 2 wreaths, which preceded a moment of silence at 9:43 a.m. That silence lasted for nearly all of the 32 minutes the cadets stood guard next to the ceremonial candle, 1 minute for each life lost 12 years ago. It was a somber morning that was only part of the university's way of remembering.
You see in a very visible way on Saturday at the 3.2-mile run in remembrance where close to 12,000 people came out, and today people come to be together to remember.
In the campus library, exhibits honor the lives that were lost and display books that represent the victims' interests and academic disciplines. The cadets will return to the memorial one more time Tuesday night to stand guard in a commitment of remembrance before returning the candle to Burris Hall.
We won't extinguish it. We bring it back into Burris as our symbol that, again, we will not forget these lives and that we will hold them dearly for as long as there's a Virginia Tech.
Though 12 years have passed, this day remains difficult for many, a sign that the pain from those lives that were lost will never truly go away.
This is a tragedy that will forever be a part of Virginia Tech, but it's so important that as a community we own that together and that we move forward together.
Authorities are searching for an armed woman who they say was infatuated with Columbine. They also say she's connected to alleged threats that led to lockouts at nearly 20 Denver area schools Tuesday. The FBI and Colorado State Patrol say 18-year-old Sol Pai is behind the threats made just days before the 20th anniversary of the tragedy.
It's an emotional time. We take every threat seriously and we act accordingly to each threat. All the students are safe right now.
Pai was last seen in the foothills of Jefferson County, Colorado Tuesday after traveling to Colorado from South Florida Monday night. And people in a southern Kentucky town say allegations against a former teacher and soccer coach are almost too bizarre to believe. Somerset police accused Stephen Wallace of offering money for sex from a former student and her mother. He faces charges of soliciting prostitution.
I mean, it was just kind of mind-blowing. I mean, I couldn't see it coming from, you know, there's no way that would ever happen in my mind.
I'm honestly not that shocked. I always thought of him as someone who would be capable of doing something like this.
Police say they've had numerous online communications between Wallace, the teen, her mother, and even her boyfriend. They say he's accused of offering to spoil her with money and saying, quote, "I can't make you rich, but I can give you $75 per meeting." A Wise County grand jury returned 7 charges on the suspect of a 2-hour manhunt and a lockdown at Mountain Empire Community College that happened on March 20th. David Dwayne Scott Jr. is now charged with disorderly conduct, being a violent felon in possession of a weapon and maliciously shooting at a building. He's also charged with grand larceny. And police say 6 people are injured after a driver intentionally mowed them down after an altercation Tuesday afternoon in Philadelphia. One witness described it as the car knocking them over like bowling pins. All 6 victims were later hospitalized, including one man in critical condition. The driver was also injured, but he's now in police custody. The incident is still under investigation. And in Chile, at least 6 people are dead after a small plane crashed into a house on Tuesday. People in Portimont say this is the 3rd aviation accident in the area and are calling for airport operations to cease. However, reports show that runway construction began in 1943, many years before the homes were built. A local official says the La Paloma Aerodrome meets security regulations and is important to the region's connectivity.
Well, much warmer temperatures for most this morning, even warmer still if you're in the cold sectors this morning. But again, just a few clouds to wake us up. Let's take a look at the satellite and radar for the last 6 hours. Not much to see there, just a few high clouds this morning. Live pinpoint Doppler radar, get just a little bit of radar clutter there around those radar sites. Everything else pretty quiet though. 46 temperatures already going up there in Monticello, up 2 degrees since 5 o'clock this morning. 61 in Jackson, Moorhead, and Prestonsburg now. 59 in Pikeville, 53 London, and 48 right here in the middle in Hazard. A little wind this morning, but not as bad as it has been. Almanac for today, forecast high 82, average high 69, the record high set back on this day in 2002 of 86. I'll have the rest of the forecast coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Taylor?
Thanks for joining Mountain News this morning. More news is on the way. To make sure help will come when we dial 911, we'll tell you about some tips that could help dispatchers help you. And Saturday, storms in Texas left behind destruction, but one person is counting their blessings. We'll share her story coming up.